Sometimes the thunder rolls, sometimes the thunder strikes, and sometimes you have Thunder Dan Palyo on the show. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast, a sports ethos presentation hosted by yours truly, Aaron Brewski, and FSWA Hall of Famer Steve, Dr. A. Alexander. And hello to everybody out there on Twitter. Please check us out over on YouTube if you want to try to get some questions in on the show. Today we're talking with Thunder Dan Palyo of Rotoballer, one of my favorite dudes in the industry. I love the way that Dan just gets it done. He just cranks out content constantly, never taking shortcuts, and just working his way to the top. And so I'm really thrilled to have him on board today. Today, we're going to be talking about a mishmash of different fantasy topics. We just had an industry mock draft that ended up being way more interesting than I ever thought a mock draft could ever be. So we'll probably cover that, this and that, a little bit of this and that, I guess. This and that, folks. That's what we're covering here today. Before we get knee deep into all of this good stuff, let's shout out our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all things football. BetOnline has every stat, matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share at $200,000. And when the game's over, head on over to our online casino, get in a game of blackjack or poker, unwind with one of our over 150 slots. Head to the website today to get in the action. Bet online, the game starts here. Okay, that read has me nice and awake for today's show. Thunder Dan, what's up, dude? It's good to see you, man.
What's up, guys?
Steelers hat.
It's the one it's my go-to hat. I just have to wear it. I didn't want any of the reflection off my bald head coming out and messing with the viewers.
I would have preferred the reflection off of your bald head, sir. It would have woke me up. Yeah, we're going around the clock here at SportsEthos and in general. I mean, I don't know how you do it, dude, because you cover football and basketball. What's a day in the life of Thunder Dan Palyo right now?
It's just I finally got my top 150 out for basketball this morning, but it's as soon as I'm done with this, I got to finish some other NBA content and then really dive into NFL Week 6 stuff because I cover all the DFS stuff for Rotoballer, so I do a weekly cheat sheet and top plays, and I'll put out a betting newsletter this weekend with my favorite bets that going into the game. So it's kind of never stops, and this overlap between seasons is kind of the bane of my existence. But I couldn't be more excited about NBA season coming up and fantasy basketball, and very honored and privileged to be here with both of you guys. Huge fans of both of your work, especially the legendary Dr. A. I've been reading this stuff for 20 plus years, going way back. So I finally get a chance to meet you, and it's a privilege, Doc.
Well, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much. Glad to have you here. I can't talk very well, and I can't talk for very long, but I have figured out the mute button, and I'm going to do what I can to contribute to this here little show today.
Oh, that mute button. It was getting the best of a few of us the other day during this mock draft. I don't know why. I think it's something about the player pool being deeper this year. It just felt like as we were going through that mock draft, there was so much good stuff to talk about. I don't know. I'm still kind of trying to figure out why I think this season's better than last season or the year before or the year before that. And maybe we'll figure that here on today's show. Maybe we won't. I would like to say it's an honor to meet you, Thunder Dan. I know we talked on the phone the other day, but I just once you started winning those FSWA Writer of the Year awards, I really just started to get to know you a little bit, and just glad to have you on the show. And doing football at the same time as basketball, for those of you who don't know, it's crazy. Like, I did it a little bit at Roto World, and I eventually just said I had to pick one. I couldn't do both. I just had to pick one. And that's a crazy time of the year there for you. So let's get into it. Let's talk. I want to kind of, if folks who don't know you for whatever reason, maybe you could spend a little bit of time just kind of talking about how you got into fantasy basketball and fantasy in general, and how you got your start over there at Rotoballer.
Sure thing. Yeah, I've been a huge. I mean, I played sports growing up, and I was always that kind of like dude on the team who happened to know everyone's statistics. I remember my dad keeping the Little League book, and like him and I going in on the old Apple IIe and like figuring out everyone's batting averages and slugging percentages and stuff. So I've always been a huge sports fan, as an athlete. And then the numbers side of sports always fascinated me, right? So I think fantasy baseball was where I started really as like a teenager, and then worked my way into football and basketball. And in my late teens, early 20s is when I started reading Roto World and reading Dr. Ace weekly column, reading the Brewski Top 150, getting into fantasy basketball more and more, and just playing a ton of it with my friends, public leagues, couldn't get enough of it. Eventually, I kind of transcended over into DFS, and when DFS became popular, kind of in that era, and that's kind of where I focused a lot of my energy. I wrote some blogs. I think I did like the Roto Grinders blog stuff for a bit. I won Blogger of the Month. It was like a $50 gift card to FanDuel or something, and I was like, maybe I can do this for like for real. So wrote for a few different sites, and then eventually it was right around the time of the pandemic when I went to Rotoballer, and just kind of from there just was writing a little bit of football, basketball, baseball. Kind of was like a Swiss Army knife for them. And then they were like, hey, do you want to start leading teams of writers for these various sports and maybe become an editor, maybe start doing some behind the scenes stuff? And I was like, sure, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And one thing led to another, and I'm going out and recruiting people, trying to hire people, trying to do all the other aspects in the industry too. So it's been, I think, almost 5 years now, and we're trying to continue to build up the site and our offerings across DFS. We have seasonal content, DFS, betting across multiple different sports. So it's a pretty big site with a lot of content. So we have a lot of writers and a lot of people to try to track down and hit deadlines and all that good stuff. I know you're familiar with all that behind the scenes stuff as well, but that's basically it. I've been at it for 7-8 years now, and 5 years kind of as the main DFS and betting guy at Rotoball.
Drew, two things. Going back to talking about how do you do basketball and football at the same time. When Matthew Pouliot finally gave in and hired me at Roto World, he was doing baseball, football, and basketball, and he was the only guy. Like, he was doing it all by himself, which is hard to even fathom in today's world. And then the other thing that I love is people that found Roto World when it was a little independent little site. Like, that was game changer for us, and you, Dan, and you, Aaron, and me. And like, man, we found this little site that does this incredible deep dive stuff. And that's what I love about Sports Ethos now. That's what I love about what you're doing, Dan. And, a lot of people are like, well, when Roto World went corporate, that's when everything started going downhill. So I'm all about indie rock, and I'm all about indie sports.
Hell yeah. I love that. I love
That's
that.
great. I'll be honest, Doc. I remember reading your articles, not just for the advice on who to pick up off waivers, but there would always be an indie rock band in there that I hadn't heard of, and I would go listen to them, whether it was like Pavement or some other kind of like 90s or 80s rock band. And I'm telling you, man, it was like you had such a great style and voice, and what you brought was like so organic. It never felt cold or impersonal. It felt like just welcoming everybody into your living room for the weekend, for the week to talk hoops and music. And I'll be honest, man, it was one of my favorite reads of all time. So again, just love it, dude. It was so much fun. And
it's so crazy.
This universe, this industry, it's great to think back to those days. That I see the connection, right, that you're talking about, Dan, and it just feels so different now. Like, everything's got to be kind of about social media, influencer style, just look at me stuff. And those old days were very easy to just crank out stuff that was really just kind of authentic. I write from the heart, whatever it was. You weren't trying to kind of like crane your neck into some sort of a picture and try to make it about yourself. And I just think it was just a cool time to be in content, and a cool time to be a reader. It was good stuff. It's really good to. We always kind of got notes from various people in management. They'd always like, kind of keep it down the middle, guys. Keep it down the middle. And Doc's stuff, my stuff, I never kept it down the middle. Doc, I don't think you kept it down the middle. And I think that indie rock component of what you were doing was I loved it. It's kind of created my music library for me, and I think it's done that for a lot of people out there. It's pretty cool stuff.
But it's cool. It's just cool for me to hear, because a lot of guys who were reading my column back then weren't gonna like finish it and turn around and send me an email and say what Dan just said. In fact, I rarely heard from people. So to hear that, 22 years later is pretty awesome. Thank you.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. All right. Well, let's talk some fantasy here. We got, I've been asking this question. It's not really a it's not really an off-season question. It's like, we've had a couple weeks of preseason now. Who do you think's like winning? It's not who the winners are from the offseason, the preseason, but who do you think, two players that you think are winning right now and kind of driving their value up fantasy boards?
Sure. Well, I mean, I was kind of coming at this for more of an off-season approach, but in general, just I don't know how you can't look at that the move that Cat made to New York as anything but a win for his value. I know he's shooting up draft boards, but that to me was massive, because his value really suffered in Minnesota and was probably going to be another, maybe even a drop this year with what Edwards is doing and losing boards to Rudy Gobert and whatnot. But Cat obviously has I think top 15 kind of potential in New York. And he's a guy who I think you can aggressively go after now in the second round. I think somebody in this draft took him with Embiid back to back, and I was like, good Lord, I don't know who that is on our board here, but I was like,
Bobby,
Embiid, Towns. Yeah, I was like, that is a beast of a start. Like, if you could do that, or pair him with another, Anthony Davis or some other first round big man, I'm like, that is an incredible way to start. So yeah, Towns I think is one guy that maybe it's an obvious answer, but I think is it's a big winner so far in the offseason.
What was your take on playing that draft out? Just out of curiosity. I know we've been asking a few people how you feel about that. I know we got 5 million leagues each, but
mixed emotions, because I really wanted to be more tuned into it. I was trying to see, I'm on the East Coast time, so I'm I got home and was trying to make dinner for my kids and get one of them out the door somewhere, so I have it on my phone over here. And I was a couple times I feel like I reached a little bit, or I probably would have taken someone different in hindsight. So I don't hate my team. I'm looking at it. I don't hate it by any means, but I probably would have a couple do-overs if I had a chance.
I'm looking at the top half of your team right now. I actually like it a lot. And it's funny, the things that fantasy analysts go through, especially if you have children, it's just this weird job that nobody understands. You do fantasy for a living. Okay, that's the first weird look you get. Second, they don't understand that everything occurs with a kid hanging off your leg. And how you navigate all of that is almost as important as the analysis itself. It's all interesting stuff. Any other winners that you could think of that's really just kind of at the top of your brain heading into?
I've been talking about him a lot. I wrote about him a little bit already, but Bogdanovich, right? In Atlanta, I feel like is a huge value when you get down later in drafts. Now, somebody took him in this draft pretty high, but I expected that. Yeah, he went in the 8th round here, but in a standard league, if you're not playing with super sharps, he's going to be hanging around there. And gosh, the guy was top 60 or top 70 last year. No DeJounte in Atlanta. Whether he starts or comes off the bench, he's phenomenal shooter. He can make plays. He can pass a little bit. He gets decent in assists, threes. We saw him in the Olympics. They almost had USA on the ropes there, right? He's a baller. I know you were probably a big fan of his for a long time when he was with the Kings. But in general, just that he just screams of a 15 to 20 pick value later in drafts.
One thing that our producer, Andre Lemos, can attest to following the European game is that Bogdanovich is Luka level insane in those environments. He's got that gamer mentality. I was watching Atlanta yesterday, as well as a little bit even right now as we're talking right here. I think they look scary, not scary, but sleeper scary as a team. They've got a lot of unique defensive pieces that have just arrived, and Jalen Johnson looks like a beast, and like they need Bogey scoring. And I think there's a lot of synergy for that squad, and then Bogey being needed offensively. And I feel like covering him in Sacramento, he was just sort of like a young guy doing his thing. The knee stuff started happening. I bet he probably thought, oh no, I can beat this and still do everything the way I want to do things. And then it didn't work out that way. Then he lands in Atlanta, and I think kind of career mortality sort of started coming into view for him. And he says, okay, I'm going to get super light now. I'm just going to get as light as I can humanly be to protect that knee. And then it just snapped his entire game right to the best place it could be. That happened last season. And the way he's talking, it feels like he understands that he has to stay light. And I think he could be in line for another good one. So, yeah.
Love it.
And people, especially as you get into intermediate leagues and below that don't really understand what kind of a great season he had last year. Yeah, you could just clean up. What about people? I hate to call anybody a loser, but like anybody losing in preseason, off season that's really catching your eye?
I don't know, Doc. Did you want to say something? I thought I saw you put a finger.
Was he a finger up there?
Go ahead,
Doc. Pushing out, Doc?
Yes, I did. I can't believe you just mentioned the Hawks without talking about the game that Reese Hache.
I know. I can't believe I did that either.
7-9, 18 points, 3 triples. And you add into that, Dyson Daniels had 3 steals and 14 points started. And Jalen had 19 points, 10 boards, 3 steals. Like I might have to replace the Luka jersey with a trade jersey, or get my Dominique back up there, because if nothing else, this team is going to be really fun.
Are you kicking up that Hawks fandom a few notches over there, Doc?
Maybe. And
yeah.
What do you got? Did your opinion of Reese Hache change at all for one game?
I'll let Thunder Dan go first, and I can follow up.
I mean, yeah, I do. I mean, a little bit, because we didn't even have a very good sample size of him in Summer League. And Summer League is like, I don't know how much everyone weights Summer League. It's very much its own kind of thing. Preseason to me means more than Summer League. Obviously, we know the kid can play. He's #1 pick. But what's fascinating to me was, I was going to say, was like Trae Young might be, and I'm not necessarily huge on taking Trae Young super early, but he might be the least value of all these starters. Like, I love Jalen Johnson in the 3rd round. I love taking Dyson Daniels late because of the whatever role he's in, starting or bench role. He's a huge steals guy, boards, assists. Bog we already talked about. Like, these guys, there's like value all across the team, and like you said, they're really fun. Maybe they end up being really good. And yeah, outside of Trae, and again, I tend to like build around big guys a little earlier than guards, so I might be a little biased there, but Trae's the only guy I'm really not actively targeting of their whole little core there.
Well, Bob Rathman, play-by-play of the Atlanta Hawks, was so high on Reese Hache. It caught my eye because Bob, a lot of team guys, they're kind of in for their team, and it just is what it is. But like, Bob's never kind of led us astray, like, ever. And so that kind of perked my eyes up with Reese Hache. And then I've been just waiting for an event like this. Now, I don't think it's going to change his stat set. I don't think he's going to just kind of become some massive defensive player overnight. I think that's one of the things that people have questions about and are holding back. But hey, you play on a good team that can play some good defense, and you're long like him. Maybe he can get enough steals to start making this equation start working out. And then if he continues to play well, they're going to want to have him out there, and they're going to want to play him about 30 minutes per game. I mean, they're as excited as anybody about this development, I'm sure, and not having to hide him, so to speak. Because if things go bad for a #1 overall pick, you can kind of start saying, hey, we're going to go play the long game. We're going to develop this guy. We don't want to put him into the frying pan too soon. Start tampering those expectations and keep him down at 25 minutes per game. It's really hard to have fantasy value in 25 minutes per game. But I want to basically crank that film up to full speed and really dig in and see what I can see. Because what I thought heading into preseason was that he was a super versatile player that might just be a little bit too finesse to be able to climb up into, say, the top 150. But this week for preseason is like great. Like there's this old adage to not take preseason seriously. It's totally true. But within that adage, this week is basically the kind of the outlier there. You can get in and see what teams are trying to do for like one game, maybe two. And that, if you're really looking for the right stuff, you can get some really good intel. So that excites me greatly. Let's see, where are we at here in our? Are we at trivia time yet? No,
You
we're
were
not.
asking me about losers. I think you asked me about
Yeah,
losers.
losers. Tell me. Sorry, tell me about some losers.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Could
I
you
mean,
host for me, by the way? Because I'm not
no,
doing
it's
so well
okay.
this morning.
I like took notes because I was super nervous that I wouldn't be prepared. So I think if we go back to the Knicks, looking at Mikal Bridges, like how does he really replicate what he did in Brooklyn, or being what's going to be like the third or fourth option on offense when you look at like such high usage for Brunson and for Towns. And it's okay because he was that guy in Phoenix. He was just the glue guy there, but he was also, not the guy who was going in the fourth and fifth rounds back then either. He was a guy we always targeted late for all the efficiency, right? Threes and steals and blocks. So I just think he's being drafted way too high because the volume won't be there, and he'll certainly be decent, well-rounded glue guy, and OG will be too. But like neither of them are gonna get the volume they need to really be, top 50 guys. So I think he's a loser when you look at like even before Towns came in, like he was going to take a hit. Now with Towns there, I think his volume really suffers and his fantasy value takes a big hit.
What about you, Doc? Are you feeling like anybody's a loser out there right now? Just sort of kind of dropping due to whatever?
I did not think you were going to come to me on that, but now that I can talk a little bit, I
Keeping
guess
you
I
on
need
your
to
toes,
be,
sir. That's
guess
all.
I need to be prepared for stuff like this. Let's do I Speak in Your Eye trivia, and then
All right.
let me think about it.
Okay. Look at that. Doc actually wants to do Ice Pick in Your Eye trivia. That's a new development around here. Ice Pick in Your Eye trivia after the break. Okay. No break. No breaks, says Andre. Come on, Andre. No breaks? What are you trying to do to us here? I kid. I know. We're doing it live. Ice Pick in Your Eye trivia is here. So, Dan, the way this is going to go is basically I probably have to fly across the country to see Doc because I'll probably lose the head-to-head matchup, and I got to buy him a beer. That's just going to be the way that it's going to be, probably. These questions are very good. Andre does a great job putting them together. Everybody has a lot of fun doing this. I say that lightly because they're very difficult questions. I think if you beat us today, you might have to flip around and ask us a question. But we'll see how this goes. Questions in. The ability to space the floor and play effectively on both ends of the court is crucial in today's NBA. Who was the first player to record 100 three-pointers, 100 steals, and 100 blocks in a season?
Jeez.
Who was the first player in NBA history to record 100 three-pointers, 100 steals, 100 blocks in a season? Dan, you get to go first. Doc gets to go second. I get to go third. You guys better get this right because I got some good guesses.
Do we get any clue as to like a year or like a decade or anything? Just
nah. Well, we do get clues when things start going downhill.
Okay, all right.
Eventually, yeah, they'll just play the music, and we'll have to leave the show.
This is probably way off. I'm going to go with a little more modern, recent guy. I'll say a Ron Artest.
Oh boy, that's a good one. That's a no, but I like the way you were thinking on that. Interesting. All right, Doc.
I don't think this dude ever hit 103. No, it's not him.
I think I know who you're gonna say, but maybe not.
I'll go with Karl Anthony Towns.
Interesting. Karl Anthony Towns. No. I just remember this guy being sort of the first one, maybe not the first one. I know there's people who might cringe at me saying that because they've been playing fantasy basketball since Rick Kamla invented the game of fantasy basketball. But the 3-point revolution is somewhat new. I'll go with AK-47 Andrei Kirilenko,
Oh,
who's most
Ooh.
famously known for being dunked on by my Baron Davis. No? What? Okay.
AK-47.
that was a good guess.
I thought
He's
it was
got to
him.
be. I'm sure he's the answer to some question, like who has the most 5x5 games or something. I don't know.
Who's which NBA player's significant other famously said you get to have one per year? One. Everybody, one. You get to have one. All right. Tip is in. He is a power forward or a center. So there you go. That cuts it down. Dan, you're up.
Man, it definitely makes me think of like a more modern, like stretch forward type player. Oh gosh. Oh, I'm like, I was gonna go the opposite way. I was gonna go like Trevor Ariza or someone like that, but I don't know about the blocks. But now it's a power forward, so I don't want to say that's obviously not right.
That's a big number.
That's a big number of blocks. That's like what,
Mhm.
1.2 or something if you play all 82. Jeez.
The first player too, because you could think like there's a few guys getting that right now.
Yeah, right.
Oh, apparently not. No, only 5 have done it. Take that, today's NBA. You're not that good.
How about Sean Marion?
Ooh,
That's who I thought Drew was going to say.
That's another good guess. Because you do have to kind of go back in time because
Well-
we're looking for the first to do it.
Right.
How about Gerald Wallace?
Ooh.
Oh my
Ooh.
God. Oh my God.
That's gonna be it. No.
No.
I thought you had
Oh.
it. I thought that was it.
I didn't think this was going to come back to me. I kind of forgot where I was at for a second.
Gerald Wallace is not a power forward.
Sean Marion of the 04-05 Suns. He's a power forward. Kind of.
Small ball 5. Small ball 4. Yeah, right.
Man, the first one to do this. Threes, blocks, and steals. All right. But, oh, man, this clue, that kind of ruins it for me. And he's a power forward or a center. There's a clue in that. Because that means he's got to play some 5 minutes. All right, let's do it. Draymond Green.
Breeze. No.
Oh, man. Nothing?
Maybe.
Nothing. Okay.
Get another clue in this.
Here. Yeah, we were fishing for clues. Next tip is from the chat. Yeah. All right. Andre says, check the screen. That's the tip.
Oh, that's it.
That's the tip right there. Oh, we got multiple names. Okay, so if you're not watching on YouTube, which you really should, if you're on Twitter, go check it out on YouTube. You know, give some of the clicks to somebody not named Elon. All right, everybody, you can do that. You can just go to YouTube. I don't know who's behind YouTube, but
is it one of those two guys? Is that what we're being told?
I think no.
I mean, Rashid would have played more games before Smith. So I guess Rashid, but if I had to pick one between the two.
I don't understand how that's a tip if those are not the answers.
Yeah,
I'm claiming shenanigans. Andre says they're suggestions.
Okay, who's up? Who's up next?
I'll say Rashid just to be the.
I know who Doc's taking. Draymond Green was number 5, by the way. He got 100 3-pointers. He just snuck up over the list or over the number. All right, that is not correct, Doc.
I always tend to have a brain fart and refer to Chris Boucher as Chris Bosh.
Which one are you picking between
them?
Wait, yeah.
Bosh is the answer.
It wasn't Boucher, no?
It's not Chris Bosh?
Chris Bosh hit 100. He hit 100.
What I'm curious is why you didn't take. I mean, I know it's a little bit on the nose to be like, oh, the names that were put on screen, I'm going to take them. But like Josh Smith seems like kind of maybe the guy. I'll do Josh Smith.
That's got to be it. No,
It was
that
a little.
fake.
He
Yeah, it
told
was
us
ball.
that those were not correct answers.
He said they were suggestions, and I
He
never
said-
go with Andre.
He
Okay, the
said
tip is in.
No.
He played in the 90s. So now this should perk up Doc's ears. Because during the 90s, I don't remember much. I think, Doc, you were more lucid than I was in the 90s.
Power forward center.
In the 90s. Thunder Dan.
I might answer Chris Bosch again.
The only guy I can think of, and it's not right. I know it's not right. Would be like Robert Ory, because I don't think he had the defensive stats. Big shot Bob, maybe.
Wow. Whoa. Look at
What?
that.
Out of left field.
And for your wonderful win, you get to now think of a trivia question on the spot. I love it. Yeah.
I have to think of one for you two. Oh, there it is. There's Robert Ory,
Apparently.
95, 96.
With the Rockets. 142 threes. That's a good chunk of threes for that era.
Yeah.
Did Big Shot Bob bring in the 3-point era? It's my column.
Yeah.
116 steals and blocks. Kevin Durant at number 4. Yeah. Andre was really proud of this question. I get it. That was a good one. Dan, we're going to cut you. We're going to take you off the hook here. You don't have to come up with a trivia question. If one pops into your mind mid-show, go for it. But
I'll try to think of one moment while we're talking.
Yeah. Now, I want to see. Let me see. We got a list of things to talk about here. Yo,
I'm not. This guy's not a loser. Let's go back to your question to me.
Yes.
He's not a loser. But no one seems to be excited about drafting Tyrese Halliburton. No one is talking. No one is talking about Tyrese Halliburton. And he seems like he's an afterthought. And his game against the Hawks was not great. And the hype train on him last year was off the charts. And now it's just like, crap. I got the 7th pick. I guess I'll take Tyrese. And I just find that interesting.
Well, Tyrese finished top 15 despite those challenges last year. I mean, in terms of a player that can reach up and get you high-end value, but with a relatively safe floor, I'm not going to be upset drafting Tyrese Halliburton. I hope he just gets he doesn't need the proverbial 15 pounds of muscle. He needs like 2. I'll be happy with 2 pounds of muscle and just keep doing what you're doing, Tyrese, and just get little bit health. Yeah, stay healthy. Exactly. Let's get into some strategy. Like, would you call yourself, Dan, a play it safe guy, or are you more of an upside guy?
Yeah, I was looking at that question, and I feel like it's I don't know if I could really be one or the other all the time. I just feel like every draft is so different. Like if you where you're drafting and where you're picking and who you end up with early, if you have a safe guy like a Kevin Durant falls to you or something at a value, like I think you take him. And then if you end up with some safe guys early, then you gamble later on. And I think if you want to be aggressive and you have certain guys circled that you want to go after early, then you be aggressive early and then take some safer guys late. I do think when you go into, I just think too many guys go into drafts with a preconceived strategy of what they're going to do, and then they force that particular strategy to the point where they don't take advantage of value that's available. So, I don't know, a little bit of both. Probably this draft that I did with you guys probably looks a lot different than other drafts I've done. I was a little bit more aggressive early on when we get into it, and safe later on too, just because I kind of wanted to have fun with it. I knew it was a mock, and yeah, I guess I'm a little bit of both. I think I try to just let it come to me.
Before we get into your draft, what about game style? Are you a head-to-head? Are you a roto? Are you an in-between?
Well, I've for years been head-to-head is like my favorite. I still is my favorite. I love it. I've been starting to play a little more roto just to kind of balance it out and maybe even kind of hedge a little bit and draft some different guys, so I'm not so invested in the same guys across all my teams. And I have an appreciation for it too. I mean, I think some people have been down on head to head because of injuries and because of the late season tanking and resting of players and whatnot. It gets really crazy down the stretch. But I still do love the head to head stuff, trash talking. I love if you're in a league that has enough weekly moves, churning and burning, baby. Like that, I write waiver wire content. I've been reading your guys' content for years. You can get out in front of people by adding the right guys and maximizing your games over the week. And if there's an edge to be had by doing that, then I'm going to do it, versus someone that might not be paying attention week to week. So I do still love head to head the most, but I've been trying to play more roto to kind of balance it out.
Yeah, it's funny because in high stakes land, Roto's king because it's probably highlights the better players, and that's what everybody's aiming for. But that head to head trash talk, I miss out on a lot of it because I'm so Roto focused. So that's a bummer. We need to get you on with Rick. Rick's a churn and burn guy.
Churn and burn.
Or Doc, you are too. I know you don't have patience with your pickups and your drops. You'll just cut them out, Doc.
Yeah, if you're hurt and you're not going to help me, I move on unless it's you. You got to be a pretty good player for me to sit on him for more than a couple weeks.
I love it. You guys are ruthless, and the true degenerate really does love stacking, and just picking up and dropping players every single day. I'm a degenerate. Don't get me wrong. I can't keep up with it. I just can't. There's too much going on.
That's the issue, is that it requires, like, once you get into the content world and you're doing daily content, that was there was a question on here about one of your like biggest fails or whatever. Like, I remember last year I was in the playoffs and I totally was adding and dropping guys and I didn't set a lineup, and I had a stud or two on the bench one night, and it literally cost me my head-to-head matchup in the playoffs because I was stretched too thin and trying to play that game. And so you're right. For people, if you don't have the time, Roto, set it and forget it, and stop worrying about all these daily ads and drops. If you're in a lot of leagues, it's tough.
It's funny, when I was young and didn't have all these kids, which they're all grown now, but I used to be the guy that would be on the waiver wire at like 4:00 in the morning. Like, nobody could ever beat me to any guy. Like, the littlest bit of news would drop. Not only was I writing that news and spreading it out there, I'd pick up the guy before I did it. It was insane. But now in like our 30-team league, I know that by the time I go to pick up somebody who benefits from a news item that just dropped, I know that Mike Gallagher is already going to have that guy. Like, he's that waiver wire degenerate guy that I used to be. I've passed on my torch.
I love, yeah. 30 deep, what a league, and you got to get there quick. And in fact, Thunder Dan, I might have a conversation with you about that after the show. Okay, thank you guys on Twitter for checking in. If you guys want to get some questions in, head on over to YouTube. And we're going to try to get as many listener questions into as many shows as we can going forward. And definitely as we get out of the preseason and into the regular season, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you guys to get your questions in. Of course, we'll give some priority to our Fantasy Pass members. Since I mentioned Fantasy Pass, I should mention the Brewski 150 is live for all sport members. Get on over there to sportsethos.com and check it out. My guys from Doc A coming out here in like the next 2 days, I believe. I should know the schedule by heart, but I don't know what day it is because, Doc, you sent me a day of the week clock and it doesn't work anymore.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, from the man himself.
Those things must be defective because mine doesn't work either.
If you're relying on a day of the week clock, you probably just shouldn't care if it works or not, but I digress.
Mine is telling me that it's Monday right now.
Is it Monday? Happy Monday, everybody out there in listener land. Okay. So your team has a lot of interesting players, and I figure we can kind of shuffle through this for this last third of the show here and just get some takes on players in general. But, it's a 9-cat industry league, so that like a lot of your guys are going to get snaked. So keep that
Yeah.
in mind, folks listening to this, is sometimes you just got to take a reach.
I explained it.
But at any point, at any rate, you get Domantas Sabonis at 1.10, and then you turn around and get Scotty Barnes at 2.3. How were you feeling about that as it was all going down?
Yeah, I really don't like picking at the end of the first round because there's just such a wide variety of options there, and I feel like the first 7-8 picks are so straightforward, right, that you feel pretty good about whoever you get there. But I kind of wanted to target points, rebounds, and assists early, and it was like Sabonis is like the guy for the big three counting stats. I don't know how you feel about if he takes a hit with what DDR in town this year in terms of his assists, and I just think he's so steady there. And if it's a small drop, he's such a nice guy to build around. And then Scotty is a guy that I did not target a lot in drafts, but I basically thought he paired so well there compared to. I mean, I was looking at KD pretty closely. I was looking at Towns and Ant and those guys, and I thought Scotty just was a little more well-rounded with the big three counting stats, and has some room to grow yet a little bit. Just wanted to be aggressive on him and get him on a team. I haven't drafted him too often. I found that a lot of other people are super high on him too, so he's going early, and I haven't had a chance to snag him. So,
well, and it pairs well with Sabonis in the sense that like the free throws might be something you turn out to punt, although
yeah,
I'm not quite sure if I've done your team analysis to know if that's true, but you get the defensive numbers that Sabonis isn't providing, so you're not dead in the water there.
Right.
On Sabonis, I think it's going to be a big year for him. I think I'm not saying he's not going to lose some stats here, but it's just like everything in Kingsland is geared up for Domantas. He must have, his agent, if he has the same agent, must have really gotten his butt into gear because they're just like pumping him up like no other. They've got a Netflix show where he's a part of a big five. That's a big set of names in the NBA. So camera crews have been following him around. He's been doing a ton of interviews for that. I mean, just the Kings in general are wrapped around him. So DeMar DeRozan coming in, I don't expect DeMar to just shrink or anything, but I just think it's still going to be all Sabonis all the time. It's going to just be interesting, the edges of the team, like the Keegan Murrays and on down. Do they get to eat at all? And at the same time, I saw some film of Keegan Murray the other day. I was like, oh my God, that guy's so good. So it's an interesting basketball team, to say the least.
We've been waiting on the Keegan. Yeah, a lot of us Keegan truthers been waiting on the breakout. Maybe the fact that he has to do less is better. He could just stand in the corner and just crush threes like crazy. I don't know. I still like Keegan late in drafts too. I still like DeMar DeRozan. I obviously took him here. That's kind of a weird pick I'm able to get.
Yeah, that is interesting. The minute you said DeMar, I was like, oh my God, he did take DeMar too.
I didn't really. So we'll get to that in a second, but just Sabonis. I mean, let's not forget he played all 82 games last year. The guy is a warrior. He battles. He's gonna. I mean, knock on wood, stay healthy. But I just think again,
he doesn't jump.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So that helps.
Games played, reliabilities. He's like such a nice guy to build around. But yeah, DDR, I didn't actually. So here's the story with DDR. I guess we have to come back to him in a second. Do you want to talk about rounds 3 and 4 first? Okay.
No, we could go. Let's go DDR. Like, so you're drafted in the 5th round. You've taken Fred VanVleet and Jaylen Brown in your 3 and 4 slots. Now DeMar's on the board. What were you thinking when that happened?
So I'm coming. Yeah, so I would take Jaylen Brown before the turn there, and then I wanted to go big man, and then of course right in front of me it goes Zion, Jared Allen, and Duran, and then quickly, like all guys who are on my queue pretty much. And not that I really wanted to go quickly and have all Toronto guys, but I love Jaren. I'm a Cavs fan. You should know I love Jaren Allen. I'm a huge on Jalen Duren this year. Love him. Zion would fit the build, honestly, with the points, rebounds, assists, and punt free throws. So he would have kind of fit what I was doing there too. And so I had all those guys. So I kind of panicked. I'm looking at like, do I want to take Kawhi? He kind of is on my do not draft list. Do I want to take Garland or someone else? I'm looking at who else went next. Siakam, Tobias. I just felt like DeRozan with the kind of start that I had, good field goal percentage, points, rebounds, assists. Not a big 3-point guy. just kind of fit what I was doing. And then afterwards, after I clicked the button, I realized, oh crap, I already have Sabonis too. So it was, I like DDR. I typically wouldn't pair him with Sabonis to have double kings. But I kind of forgot I'd taken Sabonis because I was, like I said, I was cooking dinner and I was doing a few other things. And it was after, as soon as I clicked the button, I was like, oh, took Sabonis. So anyways, I still like him a ton. I think he's such an underrated fantasy player. Just because he doesn't make threes, people think the guy, or get a whole bunch of defensive stats, think the guy isn't useful. But go ahead, Doc.
Oh, I was just telling Brew I had a question for you next.
We are signals on.
Gotcha.
Either what activity were you doing, or how does it feel the next morning when you see DeAndre Ayton in round 5?
Well, I got DeAndre Ayton round 6 here. The next.
It's round 6. Round 6.
That's okay. Yeah, I was surprised he kind of fell that late. I've seen him been going higher this year. So if you look at what he did down the stretch last year, and I know Portland is such a mess. I know it's a risk. Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to sit? He obviously is not a very good defensive center. We know that, but strictly just from points, rebounds, percentages, the guy was dominant, right? And is such a really talented offensive center. I just like, I like when they feed him and kind of build and get to him, kind of focus on him on offense. The guy is a 25 and 10 machine. Like he's really good for what he does. He's not a great defensive center, but he's that late. I mean, you don't just find 20 and 10 guys in the 6th round that late. So
no, you don't.
Great answer.
Yeah, and maybe that's something to kind of, for folks to just index about DeAndre Ayton is he's had so little hype and so much downward pressure on his ADP. You're talking about a guy that should theoretically trip and fall and play 30 minutes a game this year. Sure,
right.
Maybe some injury concessions, injury risks. Yeah, they do got a guy behind him that they want to play. Yeah, they do want to lose games. Still, take those 70 games from DeAndre Ayton. Yeah, it's baked in. Right. Exactly. That's why you're getting him at that rate. And looking at the board with centers, maybe I'll spin this into sort of a strategy question. Have you been noticing any trends that you're following in drafts where you're saying, okay, I'm going to just completely either go for big men, or I'm going to back off and I'm going to wait, or any other position like shooting guard, small forward? I've noticed there's just massive gaps at like certain stages of the ranks. Like, you can maybe get a guy early and then the middle is just no. And then, so are you fashioning any strategy around what you're seeing so far in draft season?
Maybe I've been too many industry drafts and not enough regular mock drafts, but it feels like there's these runs on either centers or point guards, right, that just take place. And like we saw just in this draft where especially in that 4th, 5th round area, like all those big men from Rudy Gobert through Allen, Duran, Zion, all these guys, even down through Claxton, all those guys tend to, people like drafting centers there. They're safe values. They're pretty predictable. Rebounds are one of the most predictable stats. And so, yeah, I do notice that runs have been taking place on centers and guards. And I find it really tough because you especially if you're drafting on either end of the snake, if you're drafting in the first 3 or the last 3, it's like I know that I reached a few times on guys because I'm like, are there gonna be big men when it comes back around? Are there gonna be any efficient guards when it comes back around? Especially when you're drafting real sharp people like this. So that would be my takeaway, is that it's kind of unpredictable, and that you're gonna have to. I don't think people should early on. I don't want to reach, but in the 4th, you go start with 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds. You start to have to going for guys that you really want and really like, and not worry about ADP and all that stuff. That would be my 2 cents.
And speaking of which, so after Ayton, and feel free if you want to talk any Freddie VanVleet or Jaylen Brown, we've kind of passed them over here, but like Trey Murphy and Austin Reeves. Now, injury news for Murphy had come out at the time. So what were you thinking there? Were you just sort of like, I don't care, I like Trey Murphy? Yeah.
Basically, I like Trey. I like Trey a lot. The injury thing, I'm hoping, is short and maybe keeps people off of him, maybe suppresses his ADP a little bit because he's a baller. And we know that between Ingram and Zion, there's probably 50 missed games there. I don't want to wish anything upon anybody, but it's based on history. And we also know that Brandon Ingram's been on the trade block for 2 years now. And the Pelicans, what's going to happen with this team? Are they going to be good and contend and keep the team together? Or if they fall out of contention, are they going to try to get something for Ingram? Maybe, and then if Brandon Ingram's hurt or traded, Trey Murphy just slides right in and is probably, I think, a top 50, top 60 kind of player with his skill set.
What about Reeves?
Yeah, I think it's an efficiency thing. I'm a little bit addicted to efficient guards, as you saw with DeRozan. I know he doesn't get defensive stats, but I love that he shoots the ball well. He's kind of predictable, and you know what you're getting, and that quantifiable. Good field percentage guards, I think, are so sometimes undervalued if they're not big steals guys or big threes guys. So I like Reeves there. He's got small forward eligibility too. Look, he's got 3. You play him point guards, shooting guards, small forward.
Yeah. And looking further down your draft board, I see Kyle Kuzma, Trace Jackson Davis, Jaime Jaquez, Dennis Schroeder, Andrew Nembhard. Were there anybody in there that just kind of sparked your interest as guys that you think maybe just, maybe the fantasy world at large is either skipping over, or just anything unique about this crew?
Not so much Kuzma. I think we know what Kuzma is, and he just was a guy who needed points and scoring at that point. Trace Jackson Davis really intrigues me. When you look at his per minute numbers, if you ever look at his per 36 stats and stuff, he's off the charts, right? He's just been fantastic. Now, what is his role? I can't imagine that they're going to play Dre at the 5 all the time, right? I mean, and Dre's ticketed for 28, 30 minutes. So Jackson Davis in 20 to 25 minutes off the bench, based on his rates and stuff, is just great value there. I mean, boards, blocks, decent assists. He could pass a little bit. They need big men there. They can't play small all the time. I like him a lot. I think he's an easy pick late in drafts. I'm a sucker for Jaime too. When's the last time Miami had their 5 starters on the court for more than any 3 games in a row? Jimmy Butler, hopefully will stay healthy. I know people are counting on that, but Hero's been hurt. Butler's been hurt. These guys are always banged up. And so last year we saw him slide in and start 25 or 30 games. Even if he's the 6th man, I like him off the bench. He's a pretty efficient scorer. Points, rebounds, assists, not a whole lot of defensive stats. Again, it kind of fits what I was doing with some of these other guys earlier. Some threes, but efficient. It's he shot 47 or 48% from the floor as a rookie. I like his game. I think he's pretty sneaky good.
He is pretty sneaky good. In fact, as I crunch numbers with him, I'm like, man, Jaime is really high up there. And then I get a little sad because I'm like, man, he doesn't get the defensive numbers. And then I get a little picky. I'm picking against Jaime, even though the numbers tell me I shouldn't be doing that. And I like him as a player, and I'm in a little bit of a funk with Jaime, and I just don't know what to do. And it's really depressing me over here. Okay, I'm laying that on thick. But the Trace situation is interesting because, I watched the first preseason game for the Warriors, and they made a big deal about not looking into the starting lineup configuration. And I think they're really pushing back on the idea of Jonathan Kuminga as small forward. And that game was so on the nose. Basically, everything looks great with the Warriors and what they're doing, and they want to play Dre at power forward. So Trace is starting. There's your kind of ticket to the upside right there. And flying in comes Kuminga. Bad shot, bad defense. Kind of bonehead maneuver, and all the body language of all the Golden State Warriors. Oh man, this guy. And I'm just like, man, this is not probably going to work out, at small forward unless he really gets this game reeled in. So I don't know how that's going to work for Trace. I mean, Trace needs Dre at power forward for Trace to get those extra minutes.
Right.
I just wonder, do they squeeze Kuminga because they like Trace at center anyway?
Yeah.
and
I mean,
Kuminga kind of leads into my next question. Are there players you're low on? And maybe we'll wrap it up like this. Is there who do you think you're particularly low on heading into the season, and just maybe anybody you're high on that you feel like giving up?
sure. So yeah, I just with the Warriors thing, it's really interesting because I think they'd be much better with Pajemski in there playing smaller, um, with Kuminga at the 4 and maybe squeezing his minutes more. I just like the way that they look with the more guards out there. But um, regardless, I just think he needs those 22 to 25 minutes at that late to get there for us. And if he gets 25 to 28, he's crushing. So we'll see.
Well,
Other
interesting thing on Kuminga, real quick, is like they need him to score. So they're
That's
going to
true,
need
right?
to live with some of this kind of stuff. I wonder how much they get pissed internally in Golden State when Kuminga's agent is floating all this stuff out to the media where, he's being mentioned in this all-star breadth. They're talking about all-star goals. And it's like,
Really?
man,
Yeah.
like, what have you accomplished yet? Like,
Yeah.
and that's really fascinating to me. But at the same time, they need his athleticism. They need him to score. They need
Yeah.
him at power
Right.
forward.
Yeah, and you're right. I think that's the best fit. But other guys, I'm always blown away by the ADP on it's like someone like Cam Thomas because he is just such a hollow player, like points and almost no threes, almost bad shooting percentage. I know I see him going. I saw him going up in the Yahoo ranks the last few times, and I'm like, why? What are you getting besides? And certainly 25 points a night is nice, but what are you getting besides scoring from Cam Thomas? To that end, Brandon Miller's another guy that I've seen people like hyping up second year breakout stuff. I don't know, his game just doesn't seem very fantasy friendly to me. Maybe as a real life NBA player, he takes some strides, but he's inefficient. Not a whole lot of defensive stats. Now he's going to take a back seat with LaMelo back. Miles Bridges loves to shoot, loves to eat all the rebounds. I don't see like a huge leap for Brandon Miller, and I think he has to not only increase his he has to either increase his volume or his efficiency. I don't know if there's a path to either one of those things for him. So those are two guys that, and again,
That's a
I'm
really
not like,
interesting take right there because I'm watching myself the Brandon Miller hype, and it's tempting, right? He's a second year player. I it's funny. I think I've kind of sort of boiled him into being a boring player. Like there's caps to his upside, and there's kind of caps to his downside. And then I
yeah,
watched his first game, and I was like, ah, man, I was hoping that like something else would jump off the screen a little bit more for your second season here, like, whether it's more athleticism, better, just skills in general. And it just kind of looked like he was more a product of his height than he was, what he was doing kind of with the ball. It's one preseason game. I mean, I want to watch
yeah.
more, but
But
I
I'm
just think
just
he's boring.
down the stretch with no LaMelo, you thought he would have like really taken over and had some big games, and he had a few, but really it was Bridges and it was and Miller's like you're getting like shooting guard stats with a small forward and a power forward guy. You're not getting a lot of rebounds. You're not getting many defensive stats. Uh, I just don't think he is like a complete kind of player that you want to take as high as he's got going up in like the 60s and stuff now. I just don't see. I just think there's so many other very valuable players in that range that are more well balanced and they're going to give you more contributions in more categories.
This year
Um,
more than ever. I was looking at our draft board, and I was looking at like 80, 90, and 100, and I was like, man, there's a lot of players I really like in the 80s, 90s, and 100s. And the best theory that I can come up with right now is that the league just needs to expand because there's so much talent in the league.
yeah,
There's no dead weight, it feels like, anymore. So when we're talking
no,
in the 80, 90, 100, it's like, oh, this is a really good player. I really like this
yeah,
player. But just not,
and
and
I see it every night. I cover DFS, so it's like we have the whole flow chart. When X guy's out, we're playing this guy, and you're like, when a guy can come off the bench who's been sitting there and doing nothing and put up 25 points or something like in an NBA game, you're like, like what? That's crazy. Like, why isn't this guy playing more? Like, so I agree with you. There's so much depth. When on the sheet here, you guys had a question about where's the value. I think the value is in the late rounds for the most part. There's certainly some guys that stick out in the mid rounds, but there's just so many guys in that 9th, 10th through 15th rounds, whatever, however many deep you're going, where you can just make hay, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of guys,
Look,
and there's
Jordan.
almost
Oh, sorry, I
yeah.
stepped on you.
No, it's
I
okay.
got excited over here. Like Jordan
No, it's
Goodwin
just
is
yeah.
like fighting for a spot in the league in Los Angeles. He got 20 rebounds in an NBA game.
Right. That's exactly what I'm
Like
talking about. Like
what?
there's some guys who are just phenomenal basketball players. And I know some of these games turn into track meets, and some of the bad teams late in the season, you're just looking at it turns into like G League type basketball. But it's also, there's you can't understate the fact that it's an NBA game going up against mostly NBA competition. But yeah, then there's zero risk to when you draft guys late in those late rounds. There's zero risk because you can just be like Doc and just cut them after 2 weeks if they're terrible or if they're not playing, right? If they're not playing minutes, like you think they would just cut them and move on. So I like taking risks in the late rounds and being aggressive, going after your guys, whether it's TJD or Jaquez or any of these other guys, hoping that they fall into more minutes or a bigger role or whatever.
I love it. I love it. All right, we got to get out of here. Doc, you've been hanging out back there. You got anything to say before we close this show out?
No, I can't really talk, so I'm just gonna chill.
That's a hard no. Doc just cut us mercilessly.
No, I do want to thank Dan for coming on and all the kind words. That was awesome.
Yeah. And we're going to do a lot more of this, hopefully, Dan. I know your schedule might be a little tight, but we'd love to have you back on the show. And folks, you got to follow Thunder Dan DFS at Thunder Dan DFS. I don't say this without meaning it. I just love your work ethic. I love the way that you put together your analysis. It's always on point. I love the fact that you're doing DFS. I'd like to personally play more DFS. I do see the value in playing DFS. Obviously, I got my own challenges over here that keep me from being able to do that. But just get on over to RotoBaller. Also, love the work that RotoBaller is doing over there. Really respect your operation. Send my best to the guys over there.
Will do.
And we'd love to have you back on the show.
Thanks so much, guys. It was a pleasure, finally getting on a show with both of you. And happy to talk basketball. Glad basketball is back in our lives here. Maybe we'll do it again sometime. Sounds good.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do us here today on Fantasy NBA Today, a Sports Ethos presentation presented by Bet Online. Ladies and gentlemen, be well.